I wasn't expecting so many new polls to come out so quickly, but look, there are many new polls for us to look over and for me to update my election prediction as of today, because in the past, there haven't been really that many polls between Harris and Trump. And now that Harris and Trump is kind of the normalcy as Biden officially stepped down, there are way more polls after it was given time for polls to be conducted. There are way more polls on actually a Harris versus Trump election. So now this will be a more accurate prediction than I've had in the past, since we have a lot more to go off of. But first, as always, make sure to subscribe to me to now join the 2%. And thank you for making it not the 1% anymore, but the 2%. Subscribe to join the 2% today. And turn on the notification bell. And now, like we always do, we're going to get to the first piece of news before going to the prediction. And that's basically J.D. Vance and Blake Masters, etc. have been saying that political leaders should have children. Honestly, I'm just going to say it. I think this is extremely stupid. Okay? I'm not afraid to say it, that this is extremely stupid. Political leaders do not have to have biological children to be political leaders. To care for children, you don't need to have children of your own. I have not always defended Harris. I will be the first one to say it, just like I've not always defended Trump. But this conjecture that political leaders should have biological children is just downright insane. Harris has 2 stepchildren, and I'm sure she cares for them just like she'd care for her own kids. And with that being said, you don't need to have biological children to care for them and to care about the future generations in our country. So even though I don't agree with Harris on everything, I do think her not having biological children shouldn't be the make or break factor with her being the president or not. It should in fact be far from it. I think presidents' personal lives, as long as they're not doing something morally terrible, I don't think their personal lives should really matter for whether or not they could serve as an effective president. Basically, the reason people are saying this is because they want the leaders to basically have an emotional connection with future generations in order for the leaders to do the best they possibly can. But you don't need to have children of your own to care about the country and its future. I just find that completely insane, and I don't understand why J.D. Vance is the one saying it. I mean, I think the Republicans, by saying this, like Vance, Blake Masters, etc., are just grasping at straws. They should be going off of policy, not attacking people's personal lives. Because, I don't know, I just think that attacking Harris for not having biological children is a little messed up, and it's definitely not applicable to whether or not she can be a good leader. That's my opinion on the issue, and I don't usually offer my personal opinions, but sometimes I will, and this time I am defending Kamala Harris on the issue. But on this one, a half dozen Democrats vote to condemn Harris for the border policy. So basically, Harris has been given the moniker, quote unquote, the border czar, as essentially people are saying that she was tasked with basically handling the southern border. And even half a dozen Democrats actually condemned her, as well as many Republicans. So I do think this exemplifies how Harris is not necessarily supported by moderates, because the moderates, and these people are from Republican districts that essentially elect Democrats, these moderates don't support Kamala Harris, even though moderates tend to support Biden, as Biden is seen as more moderate than Harris. In fact, I think one of the reasons Harris was picked as VP was to get more of the base of Democrats who may or may not like some of Biden's moderate policies and want someone a little more left of Biden. Because we'll see this with essentially John McCain, he picked Sarah Palin, who was more right than him, etc. This stuff happens time and time again, and I think Harris is a little too left for some centrist Democrats, and this may play poorly for her chances at winning this election. But now we'll get on with the election, and we'll go through each and every state, as each and every state is important in this upcoming election. So we'll go from West Coast to East Coast, starting with Washington. We'll go by alphabetical order to make this a little fun, and we'll start with Alabama. So the states that I think will solidly go to a certain candidate, such as Alabama, I'm not going to say too much on, so don't worry about that. But the states that I think are swing states, I'll say a little bit more commentary on that. So with that being said, Alabama will go to Donald Trump. Next, we go to Alaska, which also goes to Donald Trump. And remember, some of these solid states won't have recent polls and also won't have polls between Trump and Harris, not because there can be no polls, but because essentially doesn't have to be polls because we all know which direction that state will be voting. So Alaska, we all know it will vote for Republicans. Arizona is a swing state on the other hand, and Trump leading +8 is big. It basically shows that Trump is essentially going back to his roots of winning Arizona and going back to Republican roots as a whole. Romney won it by 9.1 back in 2012 against Obama, who was extremely popular in his own right. So with that being said, Arizona will probably go to Donald Trump by a decent margin in this upcoming election, especially considering he has been leading in almost every poll, including one against Arizona's own Mark Kelly. And not only that, but it was also sponsored by a partisan Democrat sponsor. So now we go to Arkansas. We know it's going to Donald Trump. So Trump has already gone 4 states in a row. This is starting to be a good lead for him. But California stops the momentum going to Vice President Harris, and now Harris does lead Donald Trump. Colorado will continue Harris's lead, even though it only goes to Biden by +6 or up to +10 in these recent polls. It does go to Kamala Harris most likely in this upcoming election. Colorado has shifted more and more Democrat and left-leaning as time has gone on. It is likely to go to the Democrats in 2024. Same with Connecticut. Remember, the West Coast and East Coast usually go to Democrats. Connecticut, being on the East Coast, will go to the Democrats in this upcoming election. Delaware, the home state of President Biden, will also go to Harris in this election. So Harris jumps to an early lead. But Trump will pick up some more states as time goes on. The District of Columbia will go to Harris. And for the RFK Jr. supporters out there, it is interesting to talk about the District of Columbia because this is outdated, but the District of Columbia was the only state or district to actually have RFK Jr. in second place at a certain point. Trump did take the lead, but RFK Jr. was in second place before Trump eventually surpassed him. So it is interesting to see that DC hates Trump so much so that RFK Jr. is leading Trump in that district for that time period. And I should probably also cover the national polls. The New York Times has Harris up by +1, and even when RFK Jr. and the others are included in a certain poll, but also has Trump up by +1 or +2. And even though Harris is up +1, I do think that this is a good sign for Donald Trump. And here's why. Trump has lost the popular vote in both elections he has participated in. Yet in 2016, he won by essentially a pretty large electoral victory. And that's because Trump knows how to get electoral votes, even though he struggles with the popular vote. So even though Harris will do well in the popular vote, and that's because of states like California, that's because of states like New York, that will vote so much so for Democrats, it puts the Democrats over the edge in terms of popular vote. Also Illinois, because of those states, Democrats tend to do better in terms of the popular vote. So Harris being up only +1 in terms of the popular vote spells disaster for her campaign, as she should probably be up by +2 or even +3 for her to even stand a chance at this election, due to the fact that Republicans perform better in swing states on average. So we're going to go back to analyzing the polls in each and every state in this election. I just thought it's important to cover why the popular vote isn't necessarily the make or break for these candidacies and who will win this election. So now we get to Florida. Florida will help Trump claw back with this election. He has had increasing leads in Florida as time went on, just like Republicans have tended to increase their leads in Florida. Remember, it was just a narrow tilt to Bush back in 2000. It went back to the Democrats, but now it's gone more and more Republican. Projected to go probably Trump +6 in this upcoming election. The state of Georgia, one of the most important states, has Trump up +3 against Kamala Harris. So Trump being up +3 is a pretty big deal given the fact that he lost it against Biden by only 0.24. And he beat Hillary Clinton by about 5. And remember, in polls, Trump was losing Georgia by as much as +8. He was actually winning in this one poll, but it's by the Trafalgar Group, who is a partisan pollster. So the pollsters that aren't really partisan had Biden leading for the most part. And Trump actually outperformed expectations. So with that being said, even if Harris outperforms expectations by 1 or 2 points, Trump will still win in the state of Georgia, bringing Trump to 75 electoral votes. And it's important to note he has won these 2 swing states, but he is still losing to Harris. That shows how much influence the state of California has being the biggest prize in the selection at 54 votes. Now, Hawaii, we all know where that is going. It is going to Harris. Idaho, we all know where that's going. That is going to Trump. Illinois is going to Harris, but it is polling way closer than we ever expected it would, but it is going to Harris regardless. Illinois maybe could be flippable in like decades to come if Republicans run a really popular candidate, because Chicago is practically the only place in Illinois that votes Democrat, but almost everyone lives in Chicago. So if more people move to the suburbs, Illinois has a chance of being flippable in the future. Indiana, the home of former Vice President Mike Pence, is going Republican. Fun fact, Indiana used to be a swing state. It went to Romney by about 10, but before that, it did go to Obama. I was pretty shocked when I found that out. And I was also shocked when I found out Iowa actually went to Obama. And Iowa is going to Trump in this election. So Trump's on a little bit of a roll here. He also wins Kansas. He also wins Kentucky, where there is a popular Democrat governor who may be picked as the vice presidential nominee for Democrats. He has an 8% chance. In fact, Mark Kelly is likely going to get picked. So, with that being said, Arizona probably goes down a little bit with Donald Trump if Mark Kelly is picked, but Trump will still win the state of Arizona. Remember, Trump did win in a head-to-head against Mark Kelly himself in Arizona with a Democrat partisan sponsor. So, Mark Kelly doesn't really have that much influence. But as we'll see, Josh Shapiro does. Louisiana goes to Trump. So yesterday, you might have seen I was complaining that there haven't been polls in Maine since April, but now we get some more in July, which do have Harris up by as much as +8. And Maine did go to Biden by +9, so that does show a little bit of a shift towards Trump in the state of Maine. But regardless, Maine does go to Harris, as well as Maine's 1st district, but Maine's 2nd district will go to Trump. So next we have the state of Maryland, which will go to Harris. There actually is a little bit of a competitive Senate race, which no one really expected until Larry Hogan started running. As you can see, Republicans do have a 20% chance in the state of Maryland. And since Maryland is so Democrat, one of the most Democrat states in the entire union, one of the most left-leaning states, especially due to its proximity to DC, many people were surprised when they realized that Maryland actually is competitive for the Senate race. But that's because of how popular some governors are, such as Larry Hogan. Now we get to Massachusetts, which goes to Harris. So as Harris gets some of the Northeast, you will see that she will get more and more electoral votes. Michigan, this is an important poll. It is even, yet Trump leads by +2. And against the governor of Michigan, again a partisan poll, Whitmer only leads by +1. So with that being said, Trump will likely lead in the state of Michigan. Whitmer only leading by 1 against Donald Trump in her home state. Given that Michigan is a swing state, if like the governor of Kentucky ran against Trump, I would expect Trump to win in Kentucky. But the governor of Michigan, being a swing state, I would expect the governor of Michigan to beat Donald Trump, but she does not. So Donald Trump will likely beat anyone in the state of Michigan if he can beat the governor of Michigan, and that includes Kamala Harris. So now we get to Minnesota, which does have Trump up by +1, but that's against Biden. There haven't been many polls on the subject, so we're just going to go by past estimates, which do have it going to Harris. Mississippi, on the other hand, will go to Donald Trump, bringing 6 electoral votes to the Republican column. Missouri will go to Donald Trump. Montana will go to Donald Trump. Nebraska goes to Donald Trump. As you can see, Nebraska's second. That is important because that is a swing district, actually, and it offers 1 electoral vote, which can be pretty important. It was even between Biden and Trump will probably win Nebraska's second, given that it has had a large rightward shift. In fact, polling indicates it's had at least a 6-point shift towards the right, and that will likely continue, and he will win Nebraska's second. But remember, this is sponsored by a Republican candidate, so we do need to take it with a grain of salt. But Harris will also lose Nebraska's 1st and Nebraska's 3rd, so Trump sweeps the state of Nebraska. Now we get to the state of Nevada. Nevada is one of the states that actually goes to Trump by way more against Harris than it does against Biden. You can see this is the same pollster, but it's going way more to Trump against Harris than it is to Trump against Biden. In fact, 10 percentage points versus 7. So Nevada does go to Donald Trump. New Hampshire, on the other hand, we saw those recent polls, +6 to Harris. So Harris will likely win the state of New Hampshire, despite this one poll that does say that Donald Trump may win in New Hampshire. Harris does pick up New Hampshire. This is still a rightward shift because Biden did win New Hampshire by 7, and now in polls it is going to Harris by 6. And every 1 percentage point shifted is extremely important because remember, Biden won this election by less than a percentage point in 3 different states. And in Pennsylvania, he barely won. Michigan, he barely won. And Nevada, he barely won. And if Trump wins those states, he will easily win this election. So each percentage point matters. And we can see a general shift of 1 or 2 points towards Republicans in these polls. In fact, upwards of even 7 points in Nebraska second. New Jersey will go to Harris. New Mexico will go to Harris. In this Republican partisan sponsored poll, it does still go to Biden, so it'll still go to Harris. New York goes to Harris, even though it used to be Trump's home state. New York City dominates New York, and upstate New York doesn't always entirely vote Republican either. But now we get to North Carolina, where Trump leads the governor of North Carolina, meaning he will also lead Harris. So Trump wins in the state of North Carolina. And this election is still close. It's decided by a difference of 4 electoral votes currently. But now we get to North Dakota, and North Dakota cuts Harris's lead by 75% down to 1 electoral vote. To everyone who supported Doug Burgum's candidacy for the vice presidency, make yourself known in the comments. I want to see it. Ohio is going to Donald Trump, and that was essentially solidified by Trump picking J.D. Vance. Oklahoma is also going to Donald Trump. Oregon, on the other hand, is going to Harris. And this election, it is neck and neck. Maybe switching Biden out was actually a good idea. But here we can see that Trump is leading pretty consistently, +2 in every poll in Pennsylvania in every recent poll. So he wins Pennsylvania. Let's say there's a 1% margin of error. He will still win by about 1%. Pennsylvania will tilt towards Donald Trump. And now Rhode Island, on the other hand, will go to Kamala Harris. But you can hardly even see it on a map, so only offers 4 electoral votes too. It is kind of densely populated. South Carolina does go to Harris. South Carolina is actually closer than most of us would expect. It only went to Trump by about 12 in the 2020 election. And it used to be kind of like a tilt state in past elections just a while ago. Reagan against Carter. Carter almost won. But that's also because Carter was from the South. But South Carolina is tilting more and more to the left, actually. Even though it has the general demeanor of being very, very Republican and conservative. South Dakota also goes to Trump, so Trump is starting to pull away with the lead. Tennessee goes to Donald Trump. Texas will pull Trump over the edge, giving its 40 electoral votes to Donald Trump, and he officially wins this election, but watch till the end to find out if he will win the rest of the states. Starting with Utah, so Utah will also go to Donald Trump, even though Senator Mitt Romney and Donald Trump do not get along. Vermont will go to Harris, we all expected that. Virginia. Trump leads in polls in Virginia against Harris, so he is leading in Virginia. Washington, on the other hand, it goes to Harris, West Virginia, home of Senator Joe Manchin, will go to Donald Trump. Wisconsin will actually go to Harris. She is leading by about +1 in recent polls, even though Polymarket does say that Wisconsin will likely go to Donald Trump, but it's essentially a coin flip. Heads goes to Trump, tails goes to Harris. Okay, it goes to Harris in this election. I know that was a little stupid. I don't care. That's kind of what you have to expect when you tune into this channel. But now finally we get to Wyoming. I don't know where it'll go. It's a little scary. Will it go to Trump? Will it go to Harris? Oh, we all knew it. It's going to Donald Trump. And now Trump wins 316 to 222 against Kamala Harris. Like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. And thank you for watching.